Welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I'm Luke.
I am Melissa.
And we are here doing Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 2, Dobby's Warning. This chapter is 12 pages and is 3.52% of this book. Melissa, tell us what just happened.
Harry finds a strange creature sitting on his bed. The little creature on the bed had large, bat-like ears and bulging green eyes the size of tennis balls. It also had a long, thin nose, a loud, high-pitched voice, and a ratty old pillowcase for clothes. This creature is Dobby, a house elf, who begins to wail and make a ridiculous amount of noise every time Harry is even a little polite toward him. This worries Harry, as his family's dinner guests have just arrived. Harry tries to comfort Dobby, but it just gets worse. Dobby seems to never have been spoken kindly to by a human before, but immediately punishes himself, loudly, when he slightly mentions anything negative against his family, who he won't tell us who they are. Dobby is in Harry's room with a warning that Harry Potter must not go back to Hogwarts. Harry can't imagine not going back, but Dobby says there is a plot to make terrible things happen at the school, and Harry would be in too much danger if he went back. Dobby begins to reveal more information about powers that Dumbledore is too decent to use, but regrets it, and once again starts to hurt himself, this time with a lamp. Uncle Vernon hears and bursts upstairs to threaten Harry to be quiet. Harry tells Dobby that he can't stay with the Dursleys, but must return to his friends, when Dobby reveals that he has been stopping all correspondence from Harry's friends. This was to trick Harry into thinking he had no friends and to make him want to stay home. Harry refuses to promise to stay home, and Dobby runs downstairs towards the Dursleys' party. Harry races after him, in time to see the gigantic pudding dessert floating near the ceiling. The pudding crashes to the floor, and Dobby disappears with a crack, leaving Harry as the scapegoat for the ruined pudding. Vernon almost covers the appearance of his nephew with his guests, but then an owl came and delivered a letter, on top of Mrs. Mason's head, who was mortally afraid of birds. This letter was from the Ministry of Magic, warning Harry not to use magic as an underage wizard. Vernon orders Harry up to his room, where he spends the next 3 days locked up, new bars on the window, and a cat flap installed on the door to shove food through. Then, in the middle of the night, Ron shows up, right outside his second-floor window.
Okay, so some characters that were introduced this chapter. We met Dobby the house elf, and we have now met the Masons. They were mentioned last chapter, but we've met them now. One character that was mentioned, I guess it's kind of a meet, is the
There's correspondence
from Mafalda Hopkirk of the Improper Use of Magic office. We didn't really have any new character or any new location introductions, and we had several magicabularies. One being the first time we've seen the word magicked, magic being used as a verb. The house elf, a hover charm, and also the Decree for the Reasonable Restriction of Underage Sorcery, 1875, paragraph C, which sounds very official, and also Section 13 of the International Confederation of Warlocks Statute of Secrecy.
As we talk about the illustration of this particular chapter, the introduction illustration is of Dobby himself, big ears and giant eyes and all.
In a pillowcase.
And a pillowcase, although he has a hat in the picture. That he's
Is that what he's holding?
It looks like it, like a beanie thing he's taking off and sort of bowing.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
I will say I think the illustration makes Dobby look a lot happier than he appeared in the chapter.
Yeah, I think so. I think it might be in one of the parts where he has a lot of adoration for Harry. Maybe. That's what it is.
So, for as neglected and mistreated as we think Harry is by the Dursleys, apparently it could be worse. Harry could be a house elf. So that sounds awful, right?
Yeah.
I think definitely if the choice between being Harry Potter with the Dursleys or being a house elf, based on what we've seen from Dobby, house elf is worse.
House elf definitely sounds quite a bit worse.
Like, I feel like that family should be very ashamed of themselves on how they treat Dobby.
I agree. Do you think it's a fairly common treatment of house elves? I mean, we don't really know, but Dobby doesn't seem to think it's weird, I guess, but like,
Right. I don't really know. I just, like, I feel very bad for that creature. You know, he's obviously a sentient being with thoughts and feelings, and yet he feels like every time he does anything even remotely inappropriate, he has to beat himself. Like, not only be beaten, but beat himself. So that's a kind of mental
extra
torture.
Punishments,
Right.
just for good measure. Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
So I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of slavery either.
No, I'm thinking that's kind of going to be a problem, and I'm kind of curious that she put that kind of character in there. So I'm wondering if anything's going to come of that, or is it that's just what it is? We have these house elves.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
So instead of being scared or worried about this strange creature in his room, because the strange creature was there at the end of the last chapter, we walk in, there's the strange creature again at the beginning of this chapter. Harry's first thought is not to be scared. It's to, oh, that's why those eyes were in the hedge. It makes so much sense now.
Yeah, I don't know. After the three-headed dog and Voldemort last year, and I just don't think
little creature in his room is going to be that scary.
Yeah, I think he just buys it at this point. You know, he's just like, that's kind of where my life is.
I was thinking it's more like, all right, well, so I'm not going to be scared, but like, all right, I'm glad we figured that out.
Yeah, at least I don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah.
Right.
I get my afternoon back.
Right. So, at one point, Harry says to Dobby, this is not a great time to have a house elf in my room. And I'm sure he's referring to the fact that there's that big party downstairs. But what would be a great time to have a house elf in your room, Harry?
Definitely not the time where he's being threatened very strictly to not make any noise and make sure that you pretend that you don't exist. I would say that really is kind of a bad time.
I would say in general, though, a house elf is not going to be welcome in the Dursleys' house.
Oh, no,
ever.
Not at the Dursleys' house. But
No.
I think Harry could manage it at a different time where it wasn't such a high tension.
High stakes.
Yeah.
I mean, we need the drill order.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We got to get that house in Majorca.
Come on now.
Priorities here.
Speaking of that, I love that the drill deal fell through.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the crazy pudding dumping nephew.
Or like the crazy weird noises upstairs.
No, that it fell through because there was an owl.
Yeah.
I think that's hysterical.
Yeah. Do you know anyone that's afraid of owls?
Our sister's afraid of all kinds of birds. And the first time I read this book was right after I had drug the three of you when you were younger. So you guys were like 10, 11, and I think Riley was 3 at the time. I had taken you guys to the zoo here in St. Louis, and Riley and I forced Abby through. There's a big giant bird cage from 1904, like a walk-through bird cage, where she cried.
1904 World's Fair.
Yeah, 1904 World's Fair bird cage, and she cried and screamed and hid her eyes the whole time. So from the moment I've read this chapter, I'm like, oh, that's Abby.
Yeah, this is our big, strong Gryffindor Quidditch commentary analyst.
Right, but nope.
As brave as a Gryffindor as it gets, unless there's a bird involved.
Yeah, no birds for this one.
I don't know if she would have gotten through the obstacle course at the end of last book with the flying keys. I don't know if that would count.
That's a great question.
We'll have to ask her.
Yeah, but I love that it all fell through because of the owl. And so part 2 of that is, oh, great. So now that we've lost the drill deal and therefore the vacation home in Majorca, something else they can hold against Harry. Hey, Harry, remember the time you caused us not to get the house in Majorca? My last kind of thought on this book is, are all of the books going to include Harry not receiving his letters? Is that like just a running theme throughout that people are writing to Harry and he's not going to get them? Now, I know he got a letter from Hagrid while he was in Hogwarts saying come visit.
Inviting him down, yeah.
Right, but that's different because that's in Hogwarts.
The only letter that we've seen him get?
He got the note from Professor McGonagall that was attached to his broom.
Right.
But as far as I can remember, those are the only ones. But again, both of those happened in Hogwarts. So are we saying that
Is
he's just
is
not,
Outpost just unreliable?
or is it just going to be a running gag that, oh, Harry's not in Hogwarts, he can't get any mail? We'll have to see. I just think that's
that is
funny.
kind of funny. So I'm gonna get back to Dobby. The self-elf punishment
Oh,
is a pretty raw deal.
I agree.
mean, that's just tough. It's like, one, you do anything wrong, you're probably gonna get reprimanded from whoever your master is,
mm-hmm.
or your family in this case.
Right.
But the fact that you're bound to beat yourself and cause bodily damage to yourself, that's just terrible. Like, how unfortunate for the elf.
Right. That sounds awful.
When Dobby is in Harry's room, we get another distinction of the usage of the word great in a different way. In book 1, when Harry's getting his wand, Ollivander describes Voldemort as being great, terrible, but great.
Yes.
Basically, an immense amount. But Harry is described by Dobby as being not only great for the famous things that he's known for, but also being good. Not saying that they're the same thing, basically making a distinction between being good and being great, and that you can be both.
Yes,
You can
because
be great
Voldemort
and
was
you can
not
be good.
both.
Right. He was great and he was terrible.
Almost using the word great as a synonym for, like, powerful.
Powerful. That's, I think, the distinction. And I think it's just interesting that we have another one of those to kind of, I don't know, think about words in a different way.
Right.
And they don't always have just one meaning. And being able to play against each other is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So, in book 1, we met a centaur.
Yes.
That was, several that were fairly sentient.
Oh, yeah.
And now we've met a house elf who's clearly sentient. What other intelligent magical creatures do you think we're going to meet?
Well, there's a lake.
There is a lake.
So I'm wondering if there's things living in the lake.
Yeah, maybe. And, I mean, the forest is big, and they say there's a lot of things living in there.
Lots of things living in there. So I feel like we could see more. I don't really know what they are, but I would like... I mean, obviously the unicorns aren't, because they talked about them, so that must be more of a creature than a being.
Right. Yeah, and the goblins at Gringotts, that was another one. They're sentient as well.
Right. And so then my brain goes to, like, Lord of the Rings, where you've got the hobbits and the elves and the dwarves and the men and the orcs and all the different, kinds. Now we have, humans and centaurs and house elves and goblins.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering, like,
who else? What other creatures?
What else is coming?
I guess you can't. I don't think you can call them creatures. Like, maybe that's the distinction.
Well, now, and I'm gonna get a little bit into the book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the actual, like, textbook, not the movie.
Right.
And in there, it does have a distinction between beings and creatures.
Okay, I thought so. That's why it sounded familiar to me. I haven't read that in quite a while.
There's a distinction between what is a being, which are those sort of sentient, can think for themselves, can communicate, can have their own rules and laws and things, and creatures, which are things more like the unicorns and the fluffies and all of those kinds of things. And that's all I'm going to say on that subject.
What about the owls? Because Hedwig seems to have a lot of personality.
Yes.
I think it's worth talking about. I think it's interesting how clearly intelligent they seem to be, even though they can't get letters to the right people all the time. But
well, but then you get into, like, the Song of Ice and Fire with the ravens being trained to deliver messages. I think that's more of a message delivery service. I don't think that they would be considered a being. I think they're creatures who are trainable, just like we have service dogs now. And
so do you think these delivery owls were trained on delivering before Harry got it? Or
yes.
Okay.
I
never did. I never thought that.
You think that
I thought they just innately did that.
No, see, I think owls are trained.
Okay. No, I don't know. I guess I really hadn't thought about it much, but that's just what I would have assumed thinking about it now.
Yeah, I assume that they're trained because delivery birds are fairly common.
Yeah.
Like, they use them in World War II, carrier pigeons.
Pigeons and eagles and falcons.
Yes, it's very much a thing. I think the unusual part for this book is using the owl as opposed to more traditional
Mm-hmm.
carrier bird type animals.
Yeah.
But I do think it's training.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Poe, my dog, has feelings, you know, so that's not surprising that you can have feelings and be trainable and not really being a
being
fully
able to,
sentient being, I guess.
I almost feel like the difference between a creature and a being is the ability to organize.
Yeah, I don't
like
think
to create like a civilization and to organize and to create your own laws and bylaws and
yeah, I don't think my dog's gonna be rerunning any plumbing anytime soon.
And I don't think owls would
either,
but I think centaurs could,
and goblins could, and house elves could.
Yeah, well,
if their masters let them,
right,
or tell them to,
right.
But no, that's a good talk. I think we'll probably get a lot more into that whenever we do cover Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. So maybe we'll put some more of that on hold, but it's definitely an interesting topic. Right. How polite of Mafalda Hopkirk. You know, she says...
Oh, yeah. So, dear Mr. Potter, we have received intelligence that a hover charm was used at your place of residence this evening at 12 minutes past 9. As you know, underage wizards are not permitted to perform spells outside of school, and further spell work on your part may lead to expulsion from said school. Decree for the Reasonable Restriction of Underage Sorcery, 1875, paragraph C. We would also ask you to remember that any magical activity that risks notice by members of non-magical community, Muggles, is a serious offense under Section 13 of the International Confederation of Warlocks Statute of Secrecy. Enjoy your holidays! Yours sincerely, Mafalda Hopkirk. Improper use of magic office, Ministry of Magic.
If you're going to reprimand somebody, at least still wish them, happy holidays. Never forget politeness.
Well, I really feel like that was such a...
It was a nice way of, here's what happened, here's what we know, here's what it's against, and this is what's going to happen.
I really feel like it's very administrative of her. It feels like there's a difference between having your teacher tell you what you did wrong and having like the superintendent tell you what you did wrong. The teachers can be like, dude, look, this is what you did. This is why it's a problem. And the superintendent or the CEO is going to be very businesslike and very
PC.
Yes.
Very by the book.
Yes. And very like, we're going to keep all the parties calm. And the teacher's just like, look, this is, you're like low level or mid level type of management's like, okay, dude, I'm going to need the TPS report cover sheet.
Did you get the memo?
I have 13 people asking me if I have the memo. Like, they're the people like, dude, you need the memo. And then you've got the like, if you could put the memo, the cover sheet on your TPS report, that'd be great. So yes, I feel like it's very the administrative, I have to put this in a certain way.
You got to be accurate,
but also very, very careful.
Yep.
About how you're
sensitive, accurate, but sensitive.
Yes. There's definitely some PR department things going on in that.
Yeah. I thought it was pleasant.
Yes.
It maybe a little bit facade and fake-ish, but
I don't necessarily think fake. It was just very proper.
Yeah. Whenever the Dursleys are preparing for the Masons to get there, and they
in chapter 1.
And they decide, well, we have to make sure that we have a couple good jokes and compliments ready. It clearly seems like there's a couple that get used. And one of which is when Vernon runs upstairs after Harry's been making noise and he goes, "You've just ruined the punchline to my Japanese golfer joke." What do you think the joke was?
I don't know, but I want to know it. Like, yeah. I think that's almost funnier. A Japanese golfer? What's the joke behind that? And I'm sure it's very bigoted.
Yeah. Oh, I would say Vernon. So. And that kind of gets to my next point of another line that we hear is from downstairs. "Tell Petunia that very funny story about those American plumbers, Mr. Mason. She's been dying to hear it."
Number one, what is it about American plumbers that's so funny?
Like, does every joke have to be racially
biased against the different countries?
Yeah, nationalistic.
Well, and also, I mean, really, who really has been dying to hear a joke about plumbers? I mean,
and do you think the guy who you work with's wife cares at all?
No,
really? I
mean, not even a little bit.
Vernon maybe acted like he thought it was funny, but I doubt
Right.
it was.
Right. Well, and you can totally see
He's just sucking up to him.
Petunia and Dudley and be like, oh, yes, that's so funny.
Oh, yeah. Oh, clearly everything was scripted. So
Oh, very much.
by the Dursleys. So it's, I don't know.
Then that makes me really happy that it didn't work.
Yeah, I don't know. That fakeness really irks me.
Yes, true.
We have another Harry dream alert at the end of this chapter.
Yes.
So the dream goes, he dreamed that he was on show in a zoo with a card-reading, underage wizard attached to his cage. People goggled through the bars at him as he lay, starving and weak, on a bed of straw. He saw Dobby's face in the crowd and shouted out, asking for help, but Dobby called, "Harry Potter is safe there, sir," and vanished. Then the Dursleys appeared and Dudley rattled the bars of the cage, laughing at him. So, and
it's
I think
very throwback to the snake in the zoo.
it is, and I don't know. I think there's only a couple times that we've seen so far that these really are like the only times we get to see Harry really processing through things that he has trouble dealing with.
Yes.
I mean, because there's a lot of unfair things that happen around him.
Right.
And he knows that, but he really, and we've mentioned this before, he does a good job of not letting it get in his way. But it seems like these dream sequences are the times where it really, we get to watch him process things.
Yes.
Internally.
And this time it's definitely like, here I am on display. Here I am trapped. Here I am needing help and not knowing who to go to. There's nobody to help me.
It seems like a lot of the other ones that we've seen, it's been more of just confusion.
Yes.
This one's more of I feel like things are unfair. You know, he feels like he's being put on display and trapped and self-conscious about it.
Right.
Because I think it's really the first time we've seen that from him.
Well, I don't think I don't think it helps that he has actual bars on his window.
Right. Yeah, they always seem to pull things that are, right around him at the time and just twist it a little.
That's what dreams do. So I do think she does a good job.
I think she does do a good job.
Because that is how dreams work. Like in the first book when he, dreamt about Snape and that Quirrell's turban was laughing at him or whatever. That's exactly what he had just seen the turban and he had just seen Snape at the feast that same evening. So it's definitely pulling from recent experiences. So.
Yeah. But right before that all happens, we have another classic case of Dursley's starvation and isolation torture. Lock him in the room, fit bars on the window. It's just
bathroom only twice a day.
Yeah. 3 meals
terrible
through a cat flap in the door. It's just terrible. I mean, I don't think we can really hate on the Dursleys enough.
I don't think there is enough hate in the world.
Yeah.
And part of me sometimes wants to excuse Dudley from that, only in that, like in this book in particular, yes, he was mean to him earlier in the day and teasing him about his birthday, and I understand that. But other than that, like, Dudley's not the one who locked him in his room. Dudley's not the one. So this isn't like older cousin bully stuff. This is adults choosing to do these things against a kid.
Yeah.
There's never a good reason for that.
I mean, come on.
There is never a good reason to treat a kid like this. It's just not.
No. I agree. It's just ridiculous.
Yep.
So what do you think this plot that Dobby is talking about could be?
I don't know.
Do you think it's a real? Do you think it could be a real thing?
Well, I guess that. Why is Dobby even there? Is it like a terrible plot against Hogwarts in general? Is it a plot against Harry specifically?
Yeah, I guess he doesn't really. He just says terrible things at Hogwarts.
Terrible things. I don't even know what terrible things could look like. Like, or I mean, is it that there's a comet scheduled and he's reading the stars like the centaurs do and he's noticing that one's going to hit Hogwarts? Is it that there's some bad evil guys? Like we beat Voldemort last year. Maybe we'll have a new bad guy coming this year and Dobby knows about it. Although how Dobby, a house elf, would know about that, I feel like that's not very clear. I don't really know. It's very sketchy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I trust
It's so vague, and he has to punish himself anytime he gets close. It's
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm on Harry's side of like, well, I've dealt with a lot of stuff before. I think I'm going to take the chance and get out of this prison.
Right. Literally, this prison.
I mean,
Yep.
So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep.
All right, my last comment is, do you think Ron was standing outside Harry's window with a boombox over his head like John Cusack?
Oh my
with
gosh.
the Peter Gabriel song on?
Cue song.
What does that say? Anything? The movie?
Maybe. I don't know. It's just funny to think about Ron. Where are you? I miss you.
Right.
Come back to me.
It's just funny. He wakes him up from a dream and he's standing outside with his boombox. Why doesn't Harry just stay in his room when Dobby goes running down the stairs?
I know, right?
What?
I didn't think about it, but I always
Like-
think that, like, just stay there.
If they have a house elf that shows up downstairs, he'd be like, I'm upstairs. Done.
I'm
Like, he'll
out.
still get in trouble for it, but he's not sitting there looking like he caused a scene.
Right. Yeah.
And then why do they think that Harry produced the hover charm? Like, how does that work? Does it just, it automatically knows that, well, there's a wizard that lives in that house that shouldn't be doing magic, so any magic that happens there, it's their fault.
Yes.
I mean,
And
that's
because it's a wizard living in a muggle house. I think.
Right.
And I've always been, like, curious about that. So is every house that has underage wizards have that kind of monitoring on it?
It
Is it just
can't.
Harry Potter's
It's gotta-
house? Is it any house that they know a wizard is living in, but it's a muggle home? So,
that's
like,
right. That's the way I view
and
it.
really, why are you using your... I feel like that's a really detailed use of your, services as a ministry. Is like, how many houses is that with
Mm-hmm.
underage wizards living in? And maybe there's not as many, but, like, is there somebody monitoring Hermione's house? Because I'm pretty
I
sure.
would think so.
I'm pretty
she
sure.
said she practiced.
Yes.
She every charm had worked for her. Every spell had worked for her
Right.
that she'd tried.
But maybe they don't monitor you until after your first year because they realize, like,
right.
I don't know. Maybe it's. I find it very odd that they're monitoring that in the first place, to be honest.
Well, I mean, we have a couple different statutes of secrecy and decrees for reasonable restrictions of underage sorcery to
Right.
deal with.
Well, and I feel like it's less about the decree of underage sorcery and more about the international
Secrecy.
statute of secrecy
Yeah.
because we don't want muggles to know. So
I
if
mean,
I'm
yeah,
Ron
your
Weasley at
Muggle
my
family,
house,
your Muggle family knows that you're magic, but anybody that could be in the house that's not them,
right?
that's the susceptible.
And, like, if
instance.
Ron does magic at his house, he's not supposed to. But if he does, there are how many other adult wizards? His
Right.
parents
For
were
how
living there or whatever.
for how this oversight seems to work, there's no way that they can know that it was him.
Exactly. And I guess maybe it's like, okay, but your parents are there, so they're keeping an eye on you. But
Kinda
Harry
like
doesn't
he
have the
has
parents
his
who are keeping
permit,
it. Yeah, maybe.
a driver's permit.
Whatever it is.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just stay in your room, man.
I know.
Come on, you don't have to be the hero on
Ridiculous.
this one. Like,
no, it's not even hero worthy. Like,
no,
just
it's
sit
not.
down.
And you're not doing anything dishonest, so like you don't have to worry about
That right there is like a downfall of Gryffindorness.
Just you have to be involved.
Yes, or I have to save the day and I have to stop him. And no, you don't.
Is that a
Sit down
Gryffindor
and
thing
wait.
or is that a Harry thing?
I think it's a Gryffindor thing.
I think it's a Harry thing.
Maybe it is.
Because Hermione was okay with not going and doing things like that,
Also
and
true.
Ron is not
Maybe
always.
it's a Harry thing.
I think it might be a Harry thing.
Okay, well, anyway, whatever his thing is, you don't need to do it. Sit down.
Take it down from 11. Turn it down back to 9 or 10.
Yeah, even 8. 8 is fine.
All right, let's hear your 5 burning questions.
So my first question is about Dobby. Is Dobby warning Harry of his own accord, or was he told to warn Harry and pretend it was his own idea?
Well, he clearly is a slave
Yeah.
and has a hard time doing anything that's against what we see him saying is his master's wishes.
But he also says his master doesn't know that he's gone, I believe.
Yeah, he'll have to shut his ears in the
Yeah.
oven for this. I don't know if I distrust that Dobby believes there to be something bad that's gonna happen. I don't think he's given us a real reason for us not to believe that he believes that.
I guess I always...
He seems genuine to me.
I get it. So
That's-
it's not like he was ordered, hey, go tell him
I
to pretend.
I
but
feel like this is
he
actually
could've
Dobby
been-
trying to help.
Whereas somebody could have let that information slip to Dobby, knowing that he would pass it on.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. Next question. This is sort of existential. So is Dobby ordered to punish himself for wrongdoings, no matter the presence of his masters? So like a blanket, hurt yourself anytime you mess up, regardless of if we know about it. Or is he so beaten down and traumatized that he assumes that the punishments will be handed out, so he just takes it upon himself and therefore has unnecessary beatings that the masters wouldn't necessarily have inflicted on their own? He just assumes that they do?
You know, I never thought about it that way. I'd always assumed that he was bound by the first part of your question, where he just automatically has to punish himself for wrongdoings.
And I did too, until I've read it this time and I'm really thinking about it. Like,
he's just it's just so ingrained in him that, well, if you do anything wrong, you're going to get beaten. So I might as well just do it myself and get it over with.
Right. Like, hey, my masters don't know about it, but I have to anyway. But they don't know about it. Or like, maybe that's my question. Like, what if they don't know about it? They don't know. It's okay. Like,
because clearly he can get at least started, like, doing wrong doings.
Not that they're necessarily wrong, but wrong in the eyes of the master.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. That's
I don't know.
that's a big question for sure.
I feel like the bounds of house elfness are a little blurry. Is he required to punish himself anytime he messes up, even if they don't know, or is he just assumed that he's going to have to be, so he might as well just do it?
Yeah, and
then he bypasses the step of them needing to know.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then he doesn't feel guilty about not telling him
because I already did it.
Because he already punished himself.
So I'm okay.
Okay, no.
Oh, that's actually a little better.
That's interesting.
It's like a weird, twisted, get out of jail free card. I mean, I'm not exactly not getting out of being punished, but then they don't know, and I'm still punished, and I'm okay with that. That's very twisted.
He doesn't take it easy on himself either.
No.
Though. He seems like he feels that is the amount of punishment that would be delivered by the masters.
True.
So he seems like he's at least true to that.
Yeah.
So he's honest with himself, and that's number one.
All right. So if there is this dastardly plot for bad things to happen at Hogwarts where Harry Potter might die or whatever, is it better for Harry to spend his last few months of life at Hogwarts being happy, or to live for many more years in the Dursley-filled Muggle world?
Hogwarts, easy. So
better to die happy after just a little bit than years and years of horribleness.
Yep.
I agree.
I'm shaking my head. I'm nodding my head.
Felt like I needed to.
Yeah, no, I mean, unless he could somehow get out of the Dursleys' house.
But he'd still not be in the wizard world necessarily.
Right.
And he wouldn't be educated.
I mean, ideally, you could get in the wizard world somewhere.
Right.
And get your own place, or, live on your own there. Just be around your own people. But of those options, I'm picking Hogwarts. Okay. For Harry, for sure.
Right. So, what would have happened if Harry lied to Dobby and said, oh yeah, sure, I won't go, just to get him to be quiet and leave? And here's my reason for asking that. Is there a consequence if he says that? Like, is there some sort of agreement that saying, yes, I agree with this house elf makes it a legally binding statement and therefore he has to not go? Or could he have just been like, sure, whatever, be quiet, and then gone anyway?
I think he probably could have lied, but I think Harry has such personal integrity that he feels that Dobby deserves him to be honest with him.
Maybe.
And it's not Harry's way of just taking the easy way out.
Or maybe it didn't even occur to him to lie.
And yeah, and that's kind of what that's just not what he does, so he doesn't even think about it.
I feel like it's a very Gryffindor thing. And maybe my even questioning that is another reason why I would never be in Gryffindor, because it's definitely why Slytherin is my backup house. Because of course I would figure out a way to get out of it, even if it's not truthful.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it definitely is it is the opposite of Slytherin quality.
Yes.
Yes. And I think Hufflepuff could probably fall into that too, being kind and caring about how the other person feels about it. If you got lied to, I mean...
Right. I think Ravenclaws don't have a problem with lying. I feel like if they can justify it rationally.
If you can justify the means.
Like
if your end justifies the means, you can think through it and convince yourself.
Yep. And this is good because
I'm smart, and that's okay.
Right. And this is the way out of the situation that doesn't require me to do things like jump on a
Yeah,
broom
and maybe it's
jump
your
off a cliff.
secondary house as to what you do to rationalize that. You know, like, yeah, I'm doing this and it's not hurting anybody else,
Right.
so I can be okay with that. That might be the Hufflepuff way. I can kind of get through this and not lie to people, and that might be the Gryffindor way. And then Slytherin is like, well, I can just get through this, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I got
good
away
with
with it.
Yep.
That's how I know it was okay.
All right. My last question. How is Ron outside the second story window? Any guesses?
Magic carpet.
Levitation charm?
I was thinking magic carpet, the ones that had holes in them from book 1. All the magic carpets all got holes in them when Harry was trying to get to King's Cross.
Yes. Well, or maybe he's on a broom.
Could be on a broom. Why couldn't he be on a broom?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you fly 2 people on one broom?
Maybe he's got a spare.
Maybe.
He's got an extra broom.
Okay.
Well, Harry's got his own broom.
It's locked up though.
Well, but
Ron didn't know that.
Ron didn't know that.
Okay.
He was thinking, well, if I just show up, we can just fly off in the sunset together, holding hands.
Romance. And what was your favorite line?
My favorite line, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, was Harry Potter asks if he can help Dobby. Dobby has heard of your greatness, sir, but of your goodness, Dobby never knew.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, and he is.
Yeah. All right. My favorite line says, "At first, it looked as though Uncle Vernon would manage to gloss over the whole thing. Just our nephew, very disturbed. Meeting strangers upsets him, so we keep him upstairs."
He does a good job glossing it over.
It is. Well, years of practice.
Yeah, being fake helps you out on that.
But I like it because it's so typical Dursleys. I don't know. It's well thought out of, how can I explain it away? Because I guarantee he had that in his head already. Like, just in case something comes up. Yep.
Yeah. No, it's another good characterization of how the Dursleys' minds work.
Oh, Dursleys.
So, in this chapter, who are you giving your chapter MVP to?
Oh, it's got to go to Dobby. I think even with his warnings and even with getting Harry in trouble, he is the most interesting character we have met. Well, in this book so far. But even in the last book, he's
the first new character well, I guess besides the Masons that we've actually met.
Yeah, I agree. But I think even in the last book, he's the first non-human, full-fledged character. We met some of the centaurs, but I definitely think they were... I don't know. They definitely have some personalities that are not quite so lovable. And I definitely think Dobby, even with his...
They're not as personable as Dobby is.
I definitely think Dobby is a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Or
a good being. A good
being.
Dobby's a good house elf.
Yeah, I definitely think he's got his heart in the right place.
Yeah, his intentions...
Methods might not be the best, but his intentions are well-meaning. So. Yeah.
My honorable mention this chapter is going to go to Mafalda Hopkirk.
Nice.
1, just for how pleasant and polite she was, and 2 for giving Harry the information he needed, even though he knew and is being falsely blamed. But
right.
But I don't know. I thought it was nice. Enjoy your holidays.
Well, that wraps it up for this week. Don't forget to find us throughout the week on various social media outputs such as Twitter, and you can find us at Not Named Podcast. You can find us online at thepodcastthat.com. You can email us your questions at thepodcastthatmustnotbenamed@gmail.com, or you can subscribe to our podcast and rate us on iTunes. Join us next week when we discuss Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 3.
The Burrow. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.